Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. And I think let me begin by just going over the write-up that I did for this so that we have it fresh in our minds and we're all on the same page. Not everybody may have seen this. And we're also looking at this in the context of the Murli of today, where there were certain elements that I think were very relevant to what we're talking about today. Some concepts need to be translated so that people do not feel strange about this title, Rebuilding the Yagya. So my definition of the Yagya is the community of people who are already Brahma Kumars and Kumaris and Raj Yogis. They recognize Shiva Baba and Brahma Baba, and they think that all of the Gyan is correct and true. In the Yagya, there is a mother and a father, Brahma Baba and Jagat Amba Saraswati. And the relationship with all the rest of us is we are brothers and sisters. While everyone is number wise, Baba uses this word number wise because no one is equal to anyone. We're so different. And externally, some are older, some are younger. And the relationship, in spite of all these differences, is we are all brothers and sisters. So what you owe to a brother and a sister in terms of what is required in that relationship is very simple: love and respect. Not more, not less. Every brother and sister is entitled to love and respect from every other one and has a duty to give love and respect to every other BK. That means we cannot have any kind of prejudice in terms of race or caste or religion or age and gyan or any of those considerations that make people disrespect people because of some prejudice. So in gyan, that is not okay. So in that way, this fraternal relationship, we have a family in which there are no uncles, aunts, in-laws, marriages, etc. And we are all a spiritual family. So Brahma Baba had appointed Mama to take care of the BKs in the early days when the BKs moved from Hyderabad to Karachi, because there was big trouble in the Sindhi community because Brahma Baba was bringing in ideas that were considered new. So what that means in practical terms is that and I bring this in later on in the write-up, but I'll just point it out here, that in India, the state of India at that time, it was under British rule. So it was a part of the British Empire. And so in India, there are lots of kings and princes and queens and all of that. And the mentality of India and England and other European countries to some extent was still feudal. And feudal means that you as a normal human being belong to the king or queen, and you do not have any freedom. And in India, this mentality is strongly supported by a scripture which I mentioned, which is the Manu Smriti. And the Manu Smriti, if you want to read the Taliban manifesto and you read the Manu Smriti and you look at them side by side, you can see that they're coming from the same mentality, which means that women are pieces of property and they have absolutely no rights whatsoever. And people who are in high position, in a high caste, they have rights, and all the way down, you get less and less rights. And the people who have the least amount of rights is women, married or single. And so what Baba had done is he had said, that's not right. And so there was a lot of reaction against that. And the Brahma Kumaris, when it was set up as a trust, Baba put all of the assets of the community into the hands of young women. And this also made people go up in arms. They thought women are completely incapable of being responsible, of looking after money or assets or anything like that. So Brahma Baba was going very strongly against the social attitudes and systems. And on top of that, he was encouraging everyone to be celibate. And that was the last straw. And so there was a court order which prevented Brahma Baba from meeting the BKs in Karachi. So in order to handle that situation, Baba put Mama in charge of the gathering. But when the family moved to Mount Abu, which was around 1951-52, then already partition had happened. India was divided into India, which decided to be a secular republic, and then Pakistan, East Pakistan, West Pakistan, decided to be an Islamic theocracy. So in an Islamic theocracy, you have the same feudal system of setting up society, and the laws are religious laws, and secular laws and religious laws are not separated. Everything is religious law. And what we now hear about is the Sharia, and that's pretty much something like that. So you can understand that there was this huge reaction against Brahma Baba and Brahma Kumaris, and this continues even now, actually. But the Brahma Kumaris are much more soft about the things that people are reactive to. And this is one of the things that I wanted to take up in this weekend session about rebuilding the Yagya. So this trust was created initially in Pakistan, but after partition, it was done over again, and it became the Brahma Kumaris Ishwarya Vishwavidyalaya, which we call in English the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, which is more or less a translation of that. Now, within the Murlis, the metaphor for the BKs is the Pandav government. So as you know, the Murlis are all the knowledge of the Gita, which is in the context of another scripture called the Mahabharata and another one called the Ramayana. So you need to know those stories at least. So the metaphor for the BKs is the Pandav government. And in the story, the Pandav government was exiled, and yet it still lives on the territory of India. So the Pandav government functions on the territory of the Kaurav government, which refers to the government of India. So therefore, there is a need to have an agreement about functioning in their territory. And by extension, when you take BKs out into the other parts of the world, which began in 1971, one center in London, where Sister Jayanti was, and also Sister Dadi Ratan Mohini was there. They basically served the Indian diaspora, and the other one was in Hong Kong, and that was also serving the Sindhi diaspora who was doing business in Hong Kong. There were a lot of Sindhis in Hong Kong. And then as time went by, it extended to almost all countries of the world. And whenever you set up in any country, you have to have an organization, association, or some kind of legal arrangement that allows you to offer classes and do whatever BKs do in that country. So by extension, all the BK organizations, associations, trusts, etc., that are established outside India exist to define the contract between BKs and the different governments concerning the rules under which it functions as an organization which has an interaction with the population of their country, so that the BKs can offer classes, do outreach events, and all that is called the organization. So I make a difference between the Yagya and the organization. I see the organization as the administrative function, which allows us to interact with the public, but it doesn't really cover what we do inside. And so I consider the Yagya as this community of Brahmins who are looking after the sacrificial fire. So the Yagya is the practice of Raj Yoga and your personal relationship with Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba. Now, in terms of money, of course, contributions are for the organization and for the Yagya. And there is no separate bank account for the organization and the Yagya. And we know, because he's told us, Shiv Baba has his own subtle bank through which he gives the return to the BKs who invest in the Yagya. And he gives us a return now, we experience that. And also he says, make an investment in this Yagya because you get the return for the next 21 births and multiplied by zillions and zillions. So it's a very good investment. So actually, we don't make contributions, we make an investment. When you, as a BK, put money in the organization to run the organization, it is also your karma with Shiv Baba. You don't really have karma with the organization, even though the organization will use that money to run itself, according to both the principles of the Yagya and the laws of the country you happen to be in. So these things are merged together, and BKs generally don't make any separation. However, to me, it's useful to make a separation because you get much greater clarity about what this is, because this is very subtle. There are many who don't really know what this is, and they ask, is this a family? Is it an organization? Is it a school? What is this? So Baba says in the Murlis, it is a family and it's a university come hospital. So that's what it is. He calls himself the father, the teacher, and the Satguru. So there is a spiritual component as well. The organization does outreach to the public to fulfill the mandate to give Baba's message. So you give Baba's message, and out of all the thousands of people who get Baba's message, a few of them become Brahmins. They recognize Baba, and then they become part of the Yagya. But the organization does not necessarily take responsibility for them. So the organization is, in many ways, it's a document, it's an agreement with a national government. And the organization does not have employees, although in some countries, members are required for the organization to be legitimate. That doesn't mean all the BKs are members of the organization, just a few. So some BKs play the role of the officers of the corporation or organization. So this is not really your identity, but this is your role. So the officers of the organization may or may not be BKs, and they are needed to keep everything running smoothly. Now, the different BK organizations are set up differently in different countries. If the organization is set up as a Hindu religious organization, which it is in a few places, then the organization takes responsibility for those who are called priestesses, which is what we mean by surrendered sisters and brothers. So if the organization is not set up as a religious organization, then there is rarely any formal arrangement for taking responsibility for the care of BKs who work full-time for the organization and live at the centers without financial remuneration. So this is a kind of, this corresponds to the feudal family relationship where you belong and it is understood that you will be taken care of, but in an organization, if that's the case, then it has to be written down in the documents of the organization. Otherwise, they will say, well, we don't have to take responsibility for you because we're an organization, we're not a feudal family. So in this, people mix up their cultural background and values with Gyan. And this creates actually quite a lot of confusion, because if you have a background in Christianity, then you're going to interpret it according to what you know in the culture or European culture, which is very different from what you know if you come from Arabic culture or Indian culture or other parts of Asia and Africa, and it's very, very different in different cultures. Now, in almost all the countries, the laws governing such organizations are democratic. Now, many people ask me questions about what do I mean by democratic organizations. So in English-speaking parts of the world, which includes Australia, America, England, some parts of Africa, and areas which came under the British Empire in earlier times, 18th, 19th centuries. All these organizations were initially set up along the lines of the military, and then they became democratic. And so there was a system which was called Robert's Rules. And these are the basis of how you function in an organization where everybody has rights to vote and rights to be heard. And so it guarantees your freedom, and that the organization is run under these principles. And so wherever you have organizations that are set up like that, then it is assumed that you know what democratic principles are. But if you come from a country where there aren't any democratic principles well known to the people, then they won't know what that is. But it's there in Robert's Rules, and you can look that up in the internet because it's all there. Now, the Yagya is based on a non-democratic, more monarchic system. Now, the system of monarchy is the king and queen as the mother and father, and all the people belong to the mother and father. And then you have this a very hierarchical family system, depending on age and caste and wealth, and all of these considerations determine your power, your social power in the place where you operate. And this was the case in Europe in the 14th century and onwards, and it was called feudalism. So the Yagya is based on this ancient way of doing things, which is feudal, and then the organization is set up in a democratic way, and there is a clash between the feudal approach to the Yagya and the democratic rules of the organization. And not very many people pay attention to this, but I am quite aware of how these two really cannot coexist very easily. They clash, and people in the middle of those clashes do get very confused. And there aren't any people who can articulate the difference. So I thought it's a good idea to describe this difference. Now, legally, India is a secular republic, but socially, it remains traditionally feudal, as described in the Manusmriti scripture. So if you want to read that, it's terribly long and goes on and on about everything, but you can find it in English in the internet. And if you've got 3 months to kill, you can sit down and read it. It's really detailed. So therefore, this marriage of the organization and the Yagya is actually normal and functional within Indian society because they're used to that. However, it doesn't work so well in the Western world. So whatever is done in Indian society, you just translate it into the BK world and it fits pretty easily. But you can't do that when people don't have a background of Hindu culture in India. That is too different, you know. So Baba often mentions that Hinduism is not a religion, but it is the development of social and religious customs following the collapse of the deity civilization at the end of the Silver Age. And in that society, it is customary for householders to take responsibility for the Brahmin priests, who in turn serve the householders by performing religious rituals. So this is very similar to the relationship between the dedicated sisters and brothers and the what we call the students who come and listen to the Murli and things like that. So this custom is incorporated into the organization. So in this way, the religious organization's money is also used for the living expenses of the priestesses, dedicated or surrendered brothers and sisters. Now, I just mentioned the notes that I sent to you earlier, and the first invitation to this EGY. And in that, I said, in the Murlis, Baba calls the Yagya Rajaswaha Ashwamegh Avinashi Rudra Gita Gyan Yagya. So that is actually what this is. And what that means is it is the royal sacrifice of the horse, the imperishable sacrificial fire of the knowledge of the Gita of Rudra for attaining a kingdom. So in that statement, you see that it's all about investing everything you have and sacrificing it, putting it into the Yagya, including your ego. The horse is your body, but it's also your ego, because most people's sense of identity corresponds with their ego, which is a false ego. And so that means a false sense of identity. So you give up everything that is false, everything that is perishable, and you study the knowledge of the Gita given by Rudra. Rudra means Shiva. And by doing that, you also learn yoga. And when you learn yoga, you take power from God. And when you understand all the principles of wisdom and you have the power of God, you qualify for being the king, and that too, the king of the whole world. So that's the biggest thing that you could possibly go for. There is nothing better than that. Now, we call this Brahma Kumari's World Spiritual University, and in Hindi, Prajapita Brahma Kumar Kumari Ishwarya Vishwa Vidyalaya. Now, looking at the context when this was set up, which was in the 30s, right? And that also corresponds to the time of the rise of Hitler in Germany. And he was also, and many people at the time were very, very interested in Indian spirituality. And this is why he used the swastika, because the swastika is a symbol of power and victory. So he used this as his symbol. Now, at the same time, Mahatma Gandhi was doing his work in India, and everybody wanted freedom from colonial powers. And also around the same time, Rabindranath Tagore was setting up his work. His father had already set up Shanti Niketan in Calcutta, which was also where Brahma Baba was, where Brahma Baba had his shop in Calcutta. So they all knew each other, and this was all the considered the way forward. And there was a huge energy of that time of change in the world all around. And then, of course, it culminated in the Second World War, which drastically changed how the world became. And so they did this for the purpose of rebuilding India, Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore, into a spiritual, socio-political new era. So the obvious choice for Brahma Baba in 1937 was to create a school, and there were many, many others as well. Everybody believed that the only way forward is to have a school where spiritual principles are developed, and everybody thought that the problem is values. So in India, the fusion of secular education and spiritual teachings is the tried and tested way forward. The same way in Islam, there's the madrasas, which are religious schools. In the same way, the Roman Catholic religion set up many schools because they all believed that schools is the way to bring the kingdom of God onto earth. So in these gatherings in India, they studied the knowledge of the Gita, but the Gita had been altered by Shankaracharya at the start of the Iron Age, that means in the 8th century. And this is what is known as Vedic India. So the Shankaracharyas set up the Vedas, Upanishads, all this. And this is where the concept of the omnipresence of God began. And they also introduced the idea of Advaita Vedanta. So this is a Hindu philosophy, which is based on the idea that there's only one kind of energy. It's a little bit similar to Einstein's general theory of relativity, because it discounts the necessity for God or the necessity for a soul, but everything is included in matter. And there are the 6 elements of matter, and in in the Vedanta, they say Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. That means anything which you can perceive through the five senses is deceptive, it's ephemeral, it's unreal. And the only thing that's real is the sixth element of Brahm, which is beyond the ether, sixth element of light, which is like non-matter, but it's still included in the idea of matter. And then in the 18th century, they introduced the idea of Krishna as the speaker of the Gita. And this was political because at that time they began to want to be free from colonial oppression. But Indians were very nonviolent because of the Gita. And so they put the picture of Krishna with his discus, which meant that in the name of nonviolence, you could kill people. And so then they intensified this idea that the speaker of the Gita is Krishna, which made it nationalist and all of that. Now, the Gita was put in Sanskrit, which is the language of the Brahmin priest caste. And so the ordinary devotees relied completely on the gurus for religious knowledge. And they just believed whatever the guru said. Now, coming back to our context of BKs, the overwhelming majority of BKs in India have not studied the Gita. I ask them, they always say, yes, we've studied the Gita. And I question more closely, and I find that actually in school, you learn a few of the Gita verses, just like in a Christian school, you will learn bits and pieces of the Bible. And then they believe that that's studying the Gita, but it's only a little bit. They don't know Sanskrit. They're not educated in comparative religion. They do not have access to or interest in studying the ancient texts, including the Manusmriti. And they have very minimal theological background. So most BKs, they know prayers, songs, stories, myths, legends, superstitions, social customs, religious rituals, temples, pilgrimage places, festivals, etc. That's what they know. And all these contain references, allusions, aphorisms, and symbols that Baba uses as trails to lead us to the truth that we have searched for since millennia. And the Murlis contain keys that unlock the symbolism, clarify the references, and join the dots that reveal the wisdom of the third eye. And what the sages and saints could not discern, Shiv Baba enables us to see clearly. And we engage in the spiritual study and practice that brings us surely and steadily to the right destination, liberation and liberation in life. And he enables us to know the creator and the creation, which the sannyasis say cannot be known. So incorporeal God, Shiv Baba, is now teaching us the original knowledge of the Gita once again. And he says it is for the people of India in particular and for the whole world in general. Now, once you see, once you know, then you can proceed to claim what is rightfully yours as his heirs and students. So my angle on this is, okay, this is what's going on. This is what Baba is teaching us. So let's stick to that. And let's not go back to the ways of the world. Let's not go back to conventional religious approaches or conventional social attitudes, and instead live as he tells us. So life in the confluence age is dual. You're in the context of the Iron Age, but you're also having the context of the Brahmin way of life. So there's a balance of Lokik and Alokik, and you remain in communion with the Paralokik. Time is short, Karmic accounts are getting settled with increasing speed and intensity. Circumstances are closing in on us. So this weekend, we want to focus on a streamlined, efficient, concentrated response to our current level of effort, study, yoga, dharana, and service. So I also mentioned about the two forms of ancient India, and one of the problems in the BK world is they mostly don't really know, or at least not clearly, the two forms of ancient India, because in school they don't learn that, and unless they are investigative people, they wouldn't really find out. So we need to distinguish between the Hinduism that is pre-Shankaracharya, and then the other kind of Hinduism, which is known as Vedic India. And most people think that's the only one there is. Now, this began with Shankaracharya, who founded what Baba calls the Sannyas Dharma. And this began in the 8th century, so it's fairly recent. Nothing to do with the Copper Age. This was shortly after the beginning of the Iron Age. So the Sannyas Dharma, what the sannyasis did is they wiped out whatever was the Hinduism of the Copper Age in terms of philosophy, ideology, theology, etc. And they introduced the idea of omnipresence and Advaita Vedanta. And then they rewrote the ancient scriptures to correspond with these philosophies, and that includes the Gita. And this is why the Gita became full of contradictions and effectively is unintelligible. And so Shiv Baba in the Murlis says they falsified it. And so in the Murlis, he tells you exactly how they falsified it, where they falsified it, how they got away with it. And with the Gyan that Shiv Baba gives, you have the key in which you can discern very easily where and how it was falsified. And that also applies to any other piece of spiritual literature. That's amazing. And now Brahma Kumaris do service of the public, and secondly, protect the Yagya. So what do we have to protect? I don't think it's about the Yagya protecting us, but we are called the protectors of the Yagya. Now, the Yagya is a flame or a sacrificial fire. And what we sacrifice into the Yagya is called vices. And we also sacrifice our time, energy, talents, money, anything that could be a possession. And the purpose of a Yagya is to avert a serious catastrophe. That's why there is a Yagya in Bhakti or in Gyan. So the big catastrophe that's coming up is called the destruction or the Mahabharata war, which is a legend, war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And there's also the Yadav community, which destroyed themselves by missiles. So all that is the circumstances of today. And this is why Baba says that the episode of the Gita is currently playing out. And the destruction happens when everything is completely polarized. Now, among BKs, there are some who deeply understand the Gyan, and they do all the disciplines and practices, and they are able to pull the power of Shiva into themselves and become Shiva Shaktis. So Shiva Shaktis is the important thing. Those Brahmins are considered teachers, BK teachers, and maybe there are about 10,000 like that. That's quite a lot. And I would say this is really the Yagya, the gathering of Shiv Shaktis, the people who really know the knowledge. They have pulled power into themselves and they are, serious yogis. So the development of the Shiv Shaktis in a real and meaningful way is what is meant by rebuilding the Yagya. Because these are the assets of the Yagya. It's not really buildings and money and so on. That's the assets. It's these people who have understood the knowledge, who have built their spiritual power, and they are invincible people. And if you don't build up these ones and make this a priority, then you don't really have good assets, and that weakens you as an organization. Now, some BKs focus on their administrative role in the organization, and some BKs focus on what it means to be Brahmins. Some do a little bit of both, but you can see that difference. Now, those who focus on what it means to be Brahmins focus on being Raj Yogis, and they study and practice Raj Yoga. And this is actually independent of the organization because it's just the study and practice of Raj Yoga. And the owner of the Murlis is God, and he speaks through Brahma Baba. And the Murlis are now all online, and of course they are encoded. That means very few people can understand the depth of the Murli, and very few can use the Murlis to take power direct from God and actually become a Shiva Shakti. But that's actually what the Murlis are for. So rebuilding the Yagya means building up the Shiva Shaktis, whether it's brothers or sisters. That means making sure that they get a spiritual education at the highest level so that they can be exceptionally good yogis. They can be beacons as receivers and emanators of the light of God. And the Yagya is connected with Brahmins who consider themselves as the heirs, the students, the followers of Shiva Baba, and that he is our father, teacher, and Satguru. And the organization focuses on administrative functions, but perhaps gives insufficient attention to the product, which is Gyan and Yoga. Now, up until recently, Dadi Janki, Dadi Gulzar, Dadi Ishu, and before them, Dadi Prakashmani, Didi Manmohini, and other Dadis of substance were the ones doing this work. And that was why they were BKs. That was what they did. They prepared others to follow in their footsteps. And a few really developed this. But these daddies are the heavy-duty ones. Now, as they got old, they could not do this so actively. Now, there are senior sisters giving many classes, but many Western BKs experience an empty space which needs to be filled. And filling this empty space is the meaning of rebuilding the Yagya. Why I say this is because a lot of time, the classes that you find are, they're not really aimed at enabling you to understand Raj Yoga at the highest level. They tend to be more general, for the general BK public, for people who don't really know Gyan very deeply. And so I think people find them a bit ordinary, a bit repetitive, and not at the level that they want. So this is why there's an empty space. So now the question is, what do we need to do? That's why we're here today together. What do we need to do? How should we work together to bring into effect this work, this presence, this energy that the Dadis brought into it in former times? And when this energy is not there, then the edifice of Gyan and Yoga collapses. It's not a physical collapse, but spiritual. And if the spiritual energy is low, then it collapses. If you continue to sustain and intensify the spiritual energy, then it has an invisible integrity. It really holds together. The organization is visible, the buildings, events are all visible. But spirituality is invisible and intangible. So the Shiva Shaktis are the people who hold the light. They destroy darkness and obstacles whenever they arise. And if the Shiva Shaktis are solid and strong, and they know the knowledge at depth, and they embody the powers, if they are experienced, expert, competent teachers, then people can rely on them. So this is the focus of our EGY this coming weekend. So I thought today that I have definitely taken up a lot of time to read this for you, so I hope that's okay. But I thought that today we must really focus on the Shiva Shaktis and Gyan and Yoga, and maybe tomorrow we'll have a look at how we relate to these two parts, the organization and the Yagya, and how we relate to the Father, the Teacher, and the Satguru. And I also have this question: do we want to be viewed as an Indian Hindu organization? And if so, to what extent? This because the organization appears to be moving in an increasingly Hindu direction, although Raj Yoga is for all souls. So Baba had said some time ago, Navyak Murli, he said that he has sent some deity souls who we think might also be second birth BKs because they pick up the Gyan really quickly and really deeply. So he sent these souls to take birth in foreign countries specifically to prove that he is the Father of all souls. So these souls took birth in the different races, religions, and cultures, and I'm sure you know many of them. In the world today, you find that most people do perceive the Brahma Kumaris as a Hindu organization, and there are many who actually don't want to become Hindus, but they're really interested in Raj Yoga. So we can look at this question on the second day. So that is the write-up that I had prepared for you and sent out to you. I think probably it's a good time for me to get into discussion about this with Vanji, because Vanji already at the beginning had put up some questions, and maybe Vanji, you would like to come on and give me those questions one by one so that I can go into more detail about that, and then we can see what other questions we have. And then if there's some more things that we need to look at in depth, we could look at that also tomorrow. Is that good?
Thank you very much, Sister Denise. That was a...
When Dadi Janki said, I'm not a Brahma Kumari, I'm a Raj Yogi, why did she say that? Is because she was seeing, and it was very obvious to all, that people really forgot about being Raj Yogis. That means people who are focused on meditating and remembering Baba and practicing to be soul conscious and trying to be karmatit and everything. And they are using the word Brahma Kumars and Kumaris to refer to something very physical, something very visible, something to do with what Dadi Prakash Mani said. I remember when she made this powerful announcement. She said in front of the big gathering in Om Shanti Bhavan, all you people, he's talking to us, all you people are interested in power, position, and property. And those are very physical, and those really are much more connected with bhakti than gyan, because bhakti is very visible. And in the Indian society, people really like position and power and money, and And in the BK organization, there is a lot of opportunity to create a position. You could be, sometimes I use these words, you could be an RC, an NC, a CC, a DC, a BC, an AC, all these words, because we are sort of divided into this hierarchy of categories. And if you are in a low category, then people look at you that you're a low kind of person. And if you're in a high category, they look at you as if you're important. And so then people think that if you want to be seen to be an important person, then you have to make sure that you're included in one of these categories. But then you get a discrepancy. In the beginning of the Yagya, who were the main BKs were identified as Brahma Baba as the Ananya children. This word Ananya. So Ananya meant those who really loved God, who really recognized him, who really understood him, who really understood the Gyan. And so naturally, they, like natural selection, they became the teachers and the examples, the yogis and all this. And I think it's just something that happens when an organization gets very large, that people come into BKs for different reasons. And, we know that there's nobody like the daddies. And we have lots and lots of didis. And yet we remember the daddies, and we remember what they said, and we remember what they told us. And now that Baba's not coming anymore, we remember our experiences with Bap Dada. We remember the level of Daddy Gulzar, the vibration, the light, all of this. And it seems to me that, a lot of people have just definitely do give much more attention to how they appear in public and how they are considered by the general public. And they're not so interested in how they're considered by God, who is actually, I see him as sitting in the background, evaluating, watching everybody and making notes, because he says that this is my school, and when the exams are done, you will get your results, and it'll all be written up on a big board, and everybody will know who is who. And there may be a lot of surprises, because being in a high position doesn't necessarily prove that you are a high level yogi. And so this is really what why I think Daddy Janki said this, and why also quite a lot of other people are saying that they really don't have enough energy and time to look after both sides, and they don't really want to. And I think this is the case, especially among a lot of the Western BKs. They're not so concerned about having a position in the BK world, and very few people do anyway. But they really want to understand the knowledge deeply and really develop the yoga. And I think that's why we have this thing called EGY, and this is why we say, I signed up for. I want to know how to meditate really well. I want to understand the knowledge very well, and I want to really understand karma so that I can become free and good yogi. That's what we signed up for, and all the other parts are not so important.
It's useful to know how and what probably is the advice you give so that the balance of both, the dual functions are done properly and they don't compromise what they came here for to begin with.
Those who have been our regional coordinators have recently been retitled as additional administrative heads of the Brahma Kumaris, which is the highest title you can get in the Brahma Kumaris Yagya. And so they have been identified as these are the examples, these are the ones who have the balance of yoga and knowledge, and they're also guiding in the administrative side. So this is important, and at the same time, most of them are in the 80s or 70s, and then I'm looking at, okay, who comes after them? Now, some people may say, well, destruction is what comes after them. But, yes, it's very possible for there to be a global nuclear holocaust any time next week or the week after. But it's not looking like it's coming quite that fast. And then the other thing is that we can't really have destruction until the Shiva Shaktis are, I think, a little bit more operational, a little bit more empowered. And also, we do have to make contact, or we have to. I remember one of the things that Baba had said is that the Western scientists will recognize the knowledge being true when they hear the details of the knowledge of the soul. And I mean, these are people who are into physics and psychology and medicine. And they're really very interested in consciousness, and they're interested in this idea of what is the most powerful thing there is in the universe, and is it splitting the atom, or is there something else? So we the way we present Gyan at the moment is not something the scientists can really relate to. And what I'm seeing is that, in general, the Westerners, new BKs are not happening among the Western world. Very, very few, if any. And yet we've got lots and lots of old BKs who really need and would like a higher education, because we're still studying, and we're studying in the same way as we studied 20, 30, 40 years ago. And, normally study will become more and more refined, more specialized, more deep as time goes by when you're a long-term student. So I think that this is missing, and it is there. And when I was a new BK, Daddy Genki was full on teaching us this stuff, very, very high level stuff, but it's not being done now anymore because maybe it's beyond people's range or whatever. But the focus of attention is on the masses, the general public, the devotees, the Hindus. And then these other people who understand everything, but they want to go higher, that's missing. And this is really what I'm, I think, most interested in. And when you have a serious bunch of people who understand Gyan in a way that doesn't look like bhakti, but really looks like extraordinary spiritual knowledge that is millions of times higher than what you can get from the popular gurus like Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra and these kinds of people who a lot of BKs think, no, they're really good. And so they start reading that. But if you would really know what the Gyan is, you would be looking at the Gyan more deeply, and you would be getting much higher level of yoga. So I'm really focused on trying to make that happen. And then I think that you will get like almost a new batch of Shiva Shaktis who could maybe be at the level of Gyan and yoga as the Dadis were, or something equivalent to that, because then people will really have to take the Brahma Kumaris seriously, because at the moment there's this perception that it's very simple and it's for uneducated people, and they like ceremonies and festivals and all of that. And you could say it's a kind of bhakti bhakti, but it's not really going to go anywhere in terms of really hitting the thought leaders of this world, the academics, the art world. If you don't reach those people, you don't reach anywhere. So, and the only people who can do that is if you get BKs who can know BK knowledge at that higher level, and it needs to become literature, and it needs to be articulated, it needs to be represented, and the attention of the organization is not on that. So maybe we do that, but it's, I think, really important to get the Shiv Shaktis up and running.
Sister Denise, so if the work that needs to be done is to build and develop the Shiv Shaktis, how do we move on? So one of the questions that we posted here is exactly how do we therefore rebuild the Yagya when we have very few like yourself, and the daddies of substance, or heavy duty daddies as you refer to them, are not there anymore. How do we proceed?
If I think about it in a really realistic way, I think that what we're doing is quite not bad. We've been doing EGY for a year, you mentioned, and so that means mostly we had one session every month, so we must have had about 12 sessions, so we've covered a lot of things. And then I tried to do the Murli notes as frequently as possible. It's not always possible to do it so regularly because I have, other things where I'm in discussion with people, doing classes hands-on, and not free to sit down and do this because it takes a lot of time. I have to go through the Hindi, I have to check. There's so many languages in the Murlis: Sindhi, Farsi, Arabic, Gurumukhi, Sanskrit, Urdu, English. And people think the Murli is Hindi. It's not. It's lots of other words which are not in Hindi. And so sometimes the translation is not at the level that it could be, but the translators, in London, Jasuben and her group have done an incredible job to bring it to us. And it's a very, very big job. And when we asked Daddy, can we not bring it to a higher level? And that was many, many years ago. And Daddy's response was, well, who has the time? to do that. And Jasu had been the only one who had really stuck it out and done it every day regularly. And now she has a team. But so I think that some of them can be looked over so that we have a few at least which are at another level, and then I try to write stuff which takes up some of the different themes of Gyan, which are really very deep, very interesting, and not everybody knows them. So I think that what we're doing is actually carrying us forward. You know, in the history of EGY, we started off only in English, and now we have 5 or 6 languages being translated, which means it's reaching lots of people all over the world, and people are thinking. And what happens when people start thinking about these things, maybe in a new way, it creates an energy in the atmosphere. You know, we have the subtle regions, which I also call the mind space. Now, when you've got BKs all over the world, and who is connected with EGY, maybe up to 1,000 people maybe are somehow plugged into it, either directly or later on or what. But that's a lot of people, and you're thinking and churning, and you're filling the mind space with energy of higher level churning. And that means we're really working on a subtle level. I mean, I'm speaking out this stuff, and that's okay, but all of you are responding to it, reacting to it, thinking about it, maybe thinking other things and going into other areas more deeply. And all of this adds up to something actually very powerful. And also, what I find is that, you know, I try and put some of these things on YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel, and there's lots of people who go on that and it includes people who are not BKs, and they like it very much at this level, even though they never did the course or whatever. So that tells me that if we do present these things in a more, you could say, sophisticated way, there's plenty of people out there who can relate to it. You know, they've done all kinds of background study anyway, because people are really searching for truth. The thing that we're doing in the mind space is reaching people's minds. And so I think that it won't take long before what we're doing is not some revolutionary thing, but it becomes more, you know, the norm. And what I wanted to say is that most of the people who go on my YouTube channel are from India, the overwhelming majority, which means that there is a big bunch of Indians who are the traditional devotees. But I think among the young people, among the educated, among those who are, you know, working for Western corporations, they're out of this feudal way of being, and they're much more into the more Western style democratic way of being. But we have people from Russia here, we have people from China, and these are not democratic governments, but the people are thinking in this type of way, you see, from these countries where it's a communist government, you know. And so the need to understand deeply, the need to apply the intellect to concepts which are more philosophical than religious, is, I think, quite much finding an interest globally. So I just don't really see anything else we can do besides carry on and allow the thing to grow and have a life of its own. And I think that, you know, we are, in a way, a community of BKs who are very focused on this. And there are many different types of BKs nowadays. And that's good whenever you have a big community, you have lots of different kinds of people in it. And so I feel optimistic. Just keep going, and it will go where it has to go. I mean, we want to do Baba's work, and he has his own plans. So if he likes this, he'll make it flourish, I guess. I think we're all right.
So how do you explain this mishmash of languages in the Murlis, and how is this God's language?
Well, you see, you have to look at how the world was at the time of Brahma Baba. He was living in Calcutta, which means in that part of the world they speak Bengali, and he is a Sindhi, which means he speaks Sindhi language. And he was a very ardent devotee. He had 12 gurus, which means he knew Sanskrit. He knew the scriptures very, very well. He knew Hindi because Hindi is the national language of India. And he knew a bit of English because he interacted with the English people who were the rulers, and he was selling diamonds to them, including to the royal family. They have some items of his even in the Tower of London. He interacted with the kingly families. He was a businessman, so he traveled widely. He, as a Sindhi, they studied the Guru Granth Sahib, so he would know Gurumukhi. And then Urdu was normal. The part of India where he lived, Sindh, there was a very large Muslim majority, and most of the Muslims speak Urdu. So he would know Urdu. And then there was a lot of Farsi in the Murli because there was a lot of Farsi people around. So, many different cultures were together, and he was a high flyer businessman. And so he would encounter a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And, people like this, they spoke all the languages all mixed up, and even in any language, like you have in the Philippines, it's a little bit of Tagalog, it's a little bit of Spanish, it's a little bit of English, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And whoever is with you, they speak that particular mix of languages. And I was in California, and if you don't know Spanish, you can't really live in California because it's lots and lots of Spanish. So it's very normal. And then what Shiva Baba does, and any spirit who enters the body of someone and speaks, they use the language of that body. And so this is how it became the language of God, and why Brahma Baba was conversant with all of these languages. And the people who translate the Murli, most of them are Gujaratis. And Gujaratis don't necessarily know Hindi as well as others for whom Hindi is the main language. And they will look, in Google Translate, because all these languages are there, but they will look in Hindi. They won't necessarily look in Marathi, and there are Marathi words there too. Marathi is the language of Bombay. And there are 9 official languages in India and hundreds of unofficial ones and dialects. So mishmash language is really absolutely normal over there. But you really need to be from Brahma Baba's community at the time when Brahma Baba was speaking to know all these terminologies. And there are occasional things in the Murli which are wildly off. And I always comment about those. And so you know what they are. And that's okay. Once you know, it's like, it doesn't matter, you know. Every time you know that there's the drama is moving like a louse, you know that it's not that, it's something else. So we know that. And, you know, in a way, it would be nice to bring the Murlis to a higher level, but I think maybe we can do it with a few of them, because all the Murlis cover so many topics. And occasionally you get a Murli which is really deep. And so then when I encounter one like that, then I say, okay, let me take a day or two to really work on it. But it's very time consuming to do this. So that's why I can only do some. And then I know that the people from Russia, they translate directly from the Hindi, but they may or may not know all the other languages that are in there. And they may or may not know the scriptural references, because there's tons and tons of quotes from different scriptures. And if you don't know those scriptures, you will think it's just not a quote. You think it's just something Baba says. And what does Brahma Baba say, and what does Shiva Baba say, and all of that? That's another area. And really what we need to know is what is exactly the new information that Shiva Baba brought. And to me, that's really interesting. And so I'm working on something about the second chapter of the Gita, because there you can really see how the knowledge of the Gita got falsified by the Vedantic people. And not everybody's interested in that, but I'm very interested in that. So I do that.
There is a difference between a Western intellect and a Hindi intellect in the way to approach and embrace Gyan and Yoga. So taking into consideration our number-wise intellect, what should we focus on more in order to deeply implement Gyan into our lives so that we gain power and enlightenment?
There was a time when Baba had said that while he classifies India of the Iron Age as Tamil Pradhan and people have a Tamil intellect, he mentioned that the Westerners have a Rajasic intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And Jagdish Bai used to talk about the intellectual consciousness. And so a lot of people from India think of Western people's thinking as what they call intellectual, but actually I would not use that word for it, but they use that word, English word. What I would say is Western people are used to conceptualizing non-material concepts. And that's really the difference between a Rajasic and a Tamasic intellect. So, you know, the way bhakti is it's really very physical. And the way the Vedanta is it's also very physical. And in the Abrahamic traditions, there's a lot of attention on God as spirit or God as a being. And so it's much easier for a person with that background to think about Shiva Baba as incorporeal. And many of the people who have a background in bhakti where everything is very physical, they just can't really go from the physical to the non-physical. Or they like the subtle region because it's got lots of angels in it and lots of, you know, visible shadows in it. but going to the incorporeal and thinking of yourself as incorporeal, and being able to conceptualize a being and differentiating that from a body is much, much easier for the Western person, I think. So there is that difference because of many reasons, and cultural reasons also. And the devotional people don't really look at Gyan in a mathematical way, whereas the Western people do tend to look at it more geometrical, mathematical, philosophical, and the people from India look at it more in a religious way. And while there are a lot of religiously based Western BKs, I am entirely non-religious, so I don't really do it that way, and it's not. I don't have any DNA of being religious. So what to do? I am more philosophical, but not really intellectual, and I would say that's different. Because intellectuals, they tend to um, take something that's already there and specialize in it. And I think, I don't know if anybody else does this, but Daddy Yankee taught us how to churn the Murli and how to extract from it the essence, the secrets, by churning it. And there's a lot of people who are very highly resistant to churning. And if you don't churn, you won't be able to actually get any of the cream or the butter or the ghee. And so you won't be able to have really good yoga. So this thing of reading the Murli many times is the way in. But if the Murli is not translated in a way that allows that, then it's very irritating. And so for me, I can only really work with the Murli, Hindi Murli, because when Baba spoke, he's speaking on many, many levels at the same time. And when you translate something that's on many levels at the same time, you may or may not be able to operate on many levels at the same time. And you might just operate on one or two levels. And then the person who is getting that, they will be limited by those one or two levels. And then you see there are people who say, oh, well, the solution is we should all learn Hindi, but that's too complicated, takes too much time. And you don't really have to learn the language, you have to learn what it means. And if you get a good translation that takes into account all those levels, it's probably better than trying to learn all those different 8 or 10 languages that are in the Murli. So I am trying my best to make the way I do these things more available to people, so it's like quicker, and hope that is useful.
You say we are not going deep enough into the knowledge. So how do we go deeper into knowledge? You mentioned a while ago, read the Murli over and over. My intellect always thinks in the same way, and I do not advance. So I think.
Well, I mean, I think just for us getting together and as a gathering here. I mean, there's quite a lot of people online here now, and in Facebook. Just having this going on amongst us and the different points that are coming up, I think it's all carrying us forward, And I'm trying to also do other work like writing, where providing people with material they can sit down and study that is extracted from the Murli, so you don't have to do all the extraction. This is something Daddy Janki used to tell us, and she would say, you know, we have extracted all this stuff, and now we're telling you, we're giving you the butter so that you don't have to take 50 years. You can get where we are in 5 minutes. So get on with it. So I thought, yeah, well, I will try do something like that, and see if it's helpful. And I think it will be. Of course, these are. You know, to create something like this is time consuming, and so it's a little bit at a time, but it's coming out there, and let's just keep moving with that. And you know, one of the things that Baba had told me a few times is that you will be doing teacher training, and I've been thinking about that and trying to figure out ways to um, after COVID or maybe during COVID, I don't know, but to have sessions where it's really about working with maybe small groups of people. They want to really understand it, and we really go into the different themes, and they learn something that they wouldn't find out in any other forum. So something like that is also on the cards, you know.
The question is how to move from BK to a high level Raja Yogi, and how to maintain the balance between Lokik and Alokik.
Well, these are, in a way, they're very traditional questions because we all are motivated to do better, be more subtle, and just participating in this kind of thing is, in a way, part of that how to. I think it's very important for us to look at our personal practice of meditation and study, and just really take the time to raise the quality of our meditation, because when we do that, we get insights, and an insight will raise our level, you know. Ask yourself this question, you know, who am I? Daddy's thing, you know, Daddy Janki's, who am I? Who do I belong to? And what should I be doing? And just really make sure that you're not just making your BK life banal. It needs to be meaningful for you. And I think you have to be quite creative, but the community of BKs is very much capable of raising their level. But I think because there's so much variation, you need to participate in the community of BKs who is on the same page as you, going on the same track that you want to go on, and then you will move forward. You will feel encouraged and inspired, and it will be very good because we do help each other all the time, you know.
I think this is a comment. When I first started reading Murli, I happened to find your Murli notes from like 2018 at the same time. So those Murli notes were very crucial for me to understand a little bit and to not give up with reading the religious sense of the Murlis. So thank you.
Well, it's important because you see, the people that Baba was speaking to were all religious. They were all Hindu religious people. And at that time, they never thought that there would be just a whole bunch of non-Hindu, non-religious, interested Raj yogis. And yet, you know, whatever Baba provides us with, we can easily understand that the packaging is the Hindu religion of that group, but that's a packaging, and everything comes in packaging. And usually you discard the packaging and you focus on what's in the packet. So, but spirituality is very subtle, and it can't be without a packet. So we can sort of extract it from the packaging of Hindu bhakti and maybe repackage it in something that is a bit more inclusive of things that we're more used to in culture of the, you know, Europe and America and Judeo-Christian world, you see, because it's the packaging is the culture. And we need to be able to relate to Gyan and yoga in connection with our culture, because otherwise, you just become a kind of bubble in the sky. And we have to be able to represent what Baba is teaching us in our day-to-day life here on Earth and not look like something that came down from Mars,
Thank you so very much. We are 5 minutes before 6 p.m. So we're really running 2 hours and there are more comments and questions. So for now, we say goodbye. We thank all and everyone for joining. Special thanks to our volunteer translators.
Om Shanti.